right, let's jump right in. Today we're diving deep into Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. A true classic.
It really is.
We're talking relationships, persuasion, the works. We're going to break it all down.
You know, what's amazing is how relevant this book still is, even though it was first published back in 1937.
Right.
Carnegie was onto something big. He realized that deep down, almost everyone wants the same thing, to feel important.
It's so true. Who doesn't like to feel appreciated, right?
Exactly.
But Carnegie didn't just talk about this idea. He had research to back it up. So what did he find?
Well, the Carnegie Foundation conducted this massive study, and the results were pretty surprising. They were looking at what makes people successful,
Oh.
even in technical fields like engineering. And guess what? They found that a staggering 85% of success boiled down to human engineering skills.
Wow, 85%. So you're saying that even back then, being a people person was more important than, say, technical knowledge.
Absolutely. Carnegie worked with all sorts of people engineers, architects, homemakers, and this principle held true across the board. You could be incredibly talented, but if you couldn't connect with people, your success was limited.
That's actually a relief to hear. No matter what you do for a living, it's reassuring to know that those people skills are so crucial. It reminds me of that story about Stevie Wonder, the musical prodigy. I mean, the guy's a genius, but
Right.
even he needed someone to recognize and nurture his talent.
Absolutely. And it's interesting how it happened. It wasn't by focusing on what Stevie lacked, his blindness, but rather on his extraordinary sense of hearing. This teacher saw that and made a point of praising him for it. She found something specific and genuine to admire, and that sincere appreciation really resonated with him. It made him feel like his unique ability was something truly special.
And that's when his musical talent really took off. So what's the takeaway here? Ditch the empty flattery and focus on genuine, specific praise.
Exactly. Carnegie talks about finding the good and acknowledging it sincerely. It's not about showering someone with generic compliments. It's about recognizing their unique strengths and contributions.
And to illustrate this, he tells a story about a janitor who just couldn't seem to get it right. No matter how hard he tried, his work was never good enough. He was constantly criticized and felt totally defeated.
He was trapped in a cycle of negativity, right? But then someone decided to try a different approach. Instead of harping on the janitor's mistakes, they started looking for things he did well, even small things.
Like what?
Maybe he swept a particular corner exceptionally well, or was proactive about emptying the trash cans, little things like that.
And they made sure to actually point those things out to him.
They did, and the transformation was almost immediate. This janitor, who was used to being criticized, suddenly felt seen and appreciated.
Wow.
His work improved dramatically, his attitude changed completely, and for the first time, he felt like he actually mattered.
That's such a powerful example of how recognizing even small efforts can make a huge difference in someone's motivation and performance. It reminds me of that quote, "People might forget what you said or did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel."
Exactly, and that leads us to another crucial principle that Carnegie highlights, the importance of being a good listener. It sounds so simple,
It does.
but in a world where everyone's constantly vying for attention, actually taking the time to truly listen can be incredibly impactful, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about how good it feels when you're with someone who really listens to you, someone who hangs on your every word.
It makes you feel heard, understood.
Yes, you feel valued. There's real power in that.
And that feeling of being heard ties directly back to that fundamental desire to feel important.
Right.
When we listen attentively, we're showing the other person that we value what they have to say.
Right.
Their thoughts and opinions matter to us, and just by giving them our undivided attention, we're making them feel important.
But we've all been in situations where, you just want to jump in and win the argument, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're convinced you're right.
Oh, absolutely.
But Carnegie throws a bit of a curveball here.
Yeah.
He suggests that we should actually try to avoid arguments altogether.
It does seem counterintuitive at first, doesn't it? Like, our natural instinct is to defend our point of view.
Right.
But how often does arguing actually change anyone's mind?
To be honest, not very often.
Yeah.
That usually just makes people dig in their heels even more.
Right. You might win the argument, but you could end up losing the relationship. And that kind of defeats the purpose of everything we've been talking about, right? Remember, Carnegie's all about winning people over, not winning arguments.
So, if we're not supposed to argue, what's the alternative? How do we navigate disagreements without everyone getting defensive and frustrated?
Well, Carnegie suggests a really interesting approach. He says, instead of focusing on the differences, try to find common ground.
Okay.
Look for areas where you actually agree. It helps lower those defenses and makes people more open to hearing what you have to say.
So it's like you're building bridges instead of walls, right?
Exactly. And then instead of trying to prove the other person wrong, try to genuinely understand their perspective.
Right.
Ask open-ended questions, listen to their answers without interrupting, and really try to put yourself in their shoes.
It's like that saying, seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Exactly. You might find that you're not as far apart as you thought. And even if you still disagree, at least you can have a more respectful and productive conversation. Carnegie actually shares a story about a man who used this very approach to resolve a tax dispute.
Oh, yeah. The guy who was facing this hefty tax bill, and he knew the inspector wasn't going to back down easily. What did he do?
Well, instead of arguing his case, he got a little strategic.
Oh, okay.
He started by acknowledging how complex tax laws can be, and then he complimented the inspector on his years of experience.
So he buttered him up a bit. A little strategic flattery?
You could say that. He appealed to the inspector's desire to be recognized for his expertise, which again goes back to that fundamental human need to feel important.
Right.
And guess what? By acknowledging the inspector's expertise, he made him more open to listening, and they were actually able to resolve the dispute amicably.
Wow. Okay, that's amazing. It's a good reminder that a little flattery, when it's sincere, can go a long way.
It really can. It's not about being fake. It's about genuinely recognizing and appreciating someone's strengths.
Right.
And that leads us to another important aspect of Carnegie's philosophy: persuasion.
Persuasion, that's a tough one. So how do we get someone to do what we want without resorting to, Jedi mind tricks?
Well, forget about the Jedi mind tricks.
Okay.
Carney says the key is to make people want to do what you're suggesting.
Okay, but how do you actually make someone want to do something, especially if it's something they might not be initially inclined to do?
The key is to frame your request in a way that highlights how it benefits them. So instead of focusing on what you need, think about how your suggestion helps them achieve their own goals or solve their problems.
Got it. Find that win-win.
Exactly. It's about finding that win-win scenario. Remember that story Carnegie tells about the dad who wanted his son to eat his vegetables?
You mean the one where the dad convinces his son that if he eats his spinach, he'll be strong enough to take on the neighborhood bully?
That's the one.
It's classic.
Now, that particular tactic might be up for debate,
Right.
but it perfectly illustrates the point.
Yeah.
The dad didn't just tell his son to eat his vegetables. He connected it to something the boy really cared about:
Right.
being able to stand up for himself. He showed how doing something he didn't necessarily want to do could help him achieve a personal goal.
That's a powerful way to frame it. It makes sense. We're all more motivated when we see how something benefits us personally. So when you need to persuade someone, the key is to figure out what motivates them,
Yes,
and then frame your request in a way that aligns with those motivations.
precisely. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about another crucial aspect of interacting with others: giving criticism.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Nobody enjoys being criticized, even if it's meant to be helpful.
All right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. But criticism, when given constructively, is essential for growth. Carnegie suggests a technique that he calls the sandwich technique
Okay.
to make this often dreaded task a bit more palatable.
All right, I'm intrigued. Break down this sandwich technique for me.
It's pretty simple, actually. You start by praising the person for something they've done well, which helps create a more positive and receptive atmosphere.
Right.
Then you gently introduce the area where they need improvement. But instead of being harsh or attacking their character, you focus on the specific behavior that needs adjusting.
So instead of saying, you're always late, you could say something like, hey, I've noticed you've been arriving a bit late to meetings lately. Is everything okay?
Exactly. It's a subtle shift, but it just feels less like a personal attack.
Right.
And finally, you wrap it up with a positive note, expressing confidence in their ability to improve.
Okay, so praise, constructive criticism, encouragement, the sandwich method.
Yeah.
I like it. And it makes me think of that letter Abraham Lincoln wrote to General Hooker during the Civil War.
Oh, you mean the letter where he masterfully addresses Hooker's tendency to be a bit, shall we say, overconfident?
Yes. Hooker had a habit of overestimating his abilities,
Right.
and Lincoln needed to address that. But he did it in such a brilliant way. He acknowledged Hooker's strengths while also pointing out where he needed to be more cautious.
It was a masterclass in constructive criticism.
Right.
Lincoln started by praising Hooker's fighting spirit. He acknowledged his past victories, which kind of softened the blow of the criticism that followed.
Right.
Then he gently but directly addressed Hooker's tendency to be impulsive and emphasized the need for more strategic thinking.
And he ended by expressing his confidence in Hooker's ability to lead the Union Army to victory. Brilliant, honest, respectful, and encouraging all at the same time.
Lincoln's letter is a perfect example of how to deliver criticism in a way that's both effective and motivating.
So, to recap, we've covered a lot of ground with Carnegie's principles. Taking a genuine interest in others, giving sincere appreciation, listening attentively, finding common ground instead of arguing, framing requests in a way that benefits the other person, and giving criticism constructively. What ties all of these principles together?
Well, I think all of these principles ultimately boil down to one core idea: treating people with respect and recognizing their inherent value as human beings. And, another thing that can make people feel really valued, surprisingly, is remembering their names.
Oh, for sure. It's amazing how such a small thing can make a big difference.
Right. Like, think about how it makes you feel when someone you've met a few times forgets your name.
The worst. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
you haven't made any impression at all. Like,
Uh-huh.
you're not even worth remembering.
Exactly. But on the flip side, when someone remembers your name, especially if it's been a while, it makes you feel seen, respected.
Totally. It's like they thought, this person is important enough to stick in my memory.
Exactly. And Carnegie actually pointed to some historical figures who were masters at this, like Napoleon III. He was famous for remembering the names of practically everyone he met.
He had a whole system for it, right?
Yeah,
I think he used to, like, write the names down and then destroy the paper.
he did. He really wanted to, like, solidify those names in his memory, both visually and,
Auditorily.
that's it.
It's pretty amazing, actually. Like, it shows how much value he placed on making others feel important.
It really does. And I think all of these principles that we've been discussing, when you actually put them into practice consistently,
Yeah.
they can truly transform the way you interact with others. And it's not about, manipulating people or putting on some kind of act.
Right.
It's about genuinely shifting your perspective. It's about coming from a place of real respect and appreciation for the person in front of you.
It's empowering, too, because
Yeah.
these are skills that anyone can learn. It's not about, being born with some kind of charm gene or whatever.
Right, yeah.
It's about making that conscious choice to connect with others on a deeper level.
Absolutely. And, it all comes back to that core principle that we keep circling back to, that deep-seated human need to feel important, to feel valued. And when we recognize that in others,
Yeah.
we don't just improve our relationships with them. I think we give them the space and the confidence to truly be their best selves.
It's like that saying, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's something like, treat people as if they were what they ought to be, and you help them become what they are capable of being.
Ooh, I like that.
Right.
I like that a lot.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Dale Carnegie's timeless wisdom, and wow, have we covered a lot today? We hope you found these insights as,
Illuminating.
yes, illuminating and as relevant as we have.
And remember, the power to make a difference really does start with that simple shift in perspective. It's about recognizing the inherent value in every single person you encounter.
So as you go about your day today, think about this. Who can you make feel important today?
Yes.
Because even the smallest gestures of genuine appreciation can create a ripple effect.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep those conversations going.
Keep learning.
And most importantly,
Keep connecting.